Dollar versus the Chinese yuan, according to simple trends, this still looks incredibly bullish. That it should look bullish is indicating that the likelihood of this trade tariff war of no ceasefire is higher than the market is currently predicting, particularly the equity markets. Trump Z and trade, a high-stakes game of chicken, that's the Associated Press. What happens when the planet's two biggest economies play a high-stakes game of chicken? The world may be about to find out, with President Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping both holding favorable economic hands to make it hard to predict who blinks first, analysts said. Why has Trump turned the screws on now? Another question. Analysts say because Xi faces a challenge maintaining the economic growth on which the government stakes its ruling legitimacy, whilst also implementing tricky reform of inefficient state industries. The IMF has called China's debt addiction dangerous. China could soon regret a mischance to end what looks to be a worsening and increasingly risky trade war. What if neither side blinks, asked Christopher Balding. If they fail to reach an agreement, China's economy would worsen and global economic growth would slow down. This is a fundamental clash of worldviews between a capitalist open economy and a closed communist one. Asking for the moon may just be Trump's out-of-the-deal approach to securing at least something that he can tout heading into elections next year. Now, this idea of who blinks first and the Chickie War is something I'd previously written about in July last year when I called it a Chickie Run. And how I was referring to James Dean, was an iconic American actor who tapped into the universal yearning and angst of nearly every adolescent human being with a raw connection that has surely not been surpassed since. In one of his most consequential films, Rebel Without a Cause, two players, teenage boys, decide to settle a dispute, read teenage girl, by way of near-death experiences. Each speeds an automobile towards a cliff. A simple rule governs the challenge. The first to jump out of his automobile is the chicken, and by universally accepted social convention concedes the object in dispute. The second to jump is victorious and, depending on context, becomes gang leader, prom king, etc. Buzz, the leader of a local gang, agrees to a Chickie Run. Both race stolen cars towards the edge of a cliff. The first to eject out of his car is branded a Chickie. Seconds into the race, Buzz discovers that his jacket is stuck on the door handle, making jumping out of the car somewhat difficult. Jimmy jumps out an instant before the cars reach the edge of the cliff. Buzz, still unable to free his jacket from the door handle, fails to escape. While he won't be branded a Chickie, he suffers a worse fate. And I also asked the same question that's being asked in that article by AP, who blinks first? In that article, in July last year, I was saying the Chinese government has been quite surgical in its response and is targeting the farm economy in particular. And you saw that with that tweet from yesterday about the agriculture ETF, which is closed at an all-time low. That was from Charlie Bilello. And in October last year, I was talking about the incident with the USS Decatur, where a Chinese warship came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur in the South China Sea. And I said then, it's surely a precursor. This geopolitical contest will likely escalate dangerously. Powerful forces on both sides are driving the world's two strongest countries towards full-fledged confrontation. Bloomberg, China hawks gain upper hand as Trump squeezes Beijing over trade. The China hawks in Donald Trump's orbit find themselves with the upper hand after the president turned the screws on Beijing for allegedly reneging on a key promise in high-stakes trade talks. With our countries at a crossroads, it is more important than ever that Trump follow his instincts and not soften his stance against the greatest existential threat ever faced by the United States, Steve Bannon. Lighthizer said Chinese negotiators reneged on a provision in a draft deal the US considered settled. And Mnuchin said that there had been a big change of direction in the talks, and for him to say that, it's a bit of a worry. If the market takes a dive, he's going to face pressure from your more market-oriented folks like Mnuchin. On the other hand, you have the hawks like Lighthizer and Navarro telling him not to compromise. Chinese equities finished higher on Tuesday, but the two-day slump has wiped out $487 billion of value. If the Trump administration follows through with the tariffs threat on Friday, I think it means the talks fall apart, said Lu Xiang of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences in Beijing. We then need to be prepared for worse than worst. The Senate Agriculture Committee Chairman Pat Roberts, a Kansas Republican, said Tuesday after a meeting with Pence that there's a lot of feeling in farm country that we're being used as pawns in this whole business. For his part, Trump has tended to publicly side with his administration's hawks, famously declaring in a December tweet, "I'm a tariff man." But he also regards the performance of the US stock market as a sort of barometer for his presidency and has encouraged his negotiators to reach a deal that would boost equities ahead of his re-election campaign in 2020. Now, October 2018, I said it has now turned out that for all the Trump bluster, when it comes to trade, the likes of Lighthizer and Navarro have moved with surgical precision, and clearly they're reasserting cockpit control. And then about the US stock market, I said previously, this is in fact President Trump's Achilles heel. China's stock market down again. It's down more than 11% during the last 10 trading days. Volume on US-listed China ETFs spiked as investors headed to the exits.